Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Rules and Legislative Oversight Committee. I am Councilman Schleifer, Chair of the committee. To my left is Councilman Conway, member of the committee. To my right is Council Vice President Middleton, member of the committee. And to her right is Councilwoman Ramos, member of the committee. Thank you all for joining us for this important hearing, 24-0502, Building, Fire, and Related Codes, 2021 edition. Interesting, we're on 24, okay. We will go agency by agency for presentations. And we will start over here on the left with DHCD. Go ahead, Mr. Hessler.
Good morning, Councilman and members of the committee. Jason Hessler for Deputy Commissioner for Baltimore City Department of Housing and Community Development. The bill here is something we do every 3 years in updating the Baltimore City Building, Fire, and Related Codes. Just as background information, the International Code Council meets throughout the 3-year period, considering amendments and changes to the existing ICC codes, the international codes. Those get adopted by that council, and then the state of Maryland has 18 months to review those and adopt them. And then once they adopt them, the city then reviews and makes updates and changes in line with our building, fire, and related codes. So for the most part, we adopt the ICC in its entirety, which electronically, my PDF is over 4,800 pages of code. So we adopt that, but then we, within the building, fire, and related codes, make some adjustments and changes so that it fits for Baltimore City. I will just highlight, because a lot of the changes are updating the reference to the year, changing titles, renumbering to stay in line, our building fire code stay in line with the ICC. So I'll update 4 changes that Department of Housing made to the building, fire, and related codes that are, I consider significant, and then I will, when the fire department has their chance, they can speak to the 3 or 4 changes that they had. So our first one is on page 19, where we are adding in a 45-day requirement for temporary event permits. This is in line with special event permits that DOT issues. We're asking for this to be included because we get a lot of these permits day of or day before, and over the last 2 years, with some of the conflicts that have happened at special events, we've expanded the review of special events to include the police department, the fire department, EMTs, DOT, Park and Recs, and so it's necessary to have a longer time frame in order to properly review these and get them issued timely. We will, if this passes, go back and pull from our records the contact information for everyone over the last 2 years that has applied for a temporary event permit and send them notice that this change goes into effect so that people that regularly use this service aren't caught off guard. And then we'll also obviously make it available on our website and update all our forms. Our other change was on page 21 in reference to the reinstatement of permits, which is clarifying that once a permit has expired and has passed the date when the expiration can be renewed, you're only entitled to 1 reinstatement of that permit. The reinstatement process is there and is available for up to 3 years after a permit expires. It's there so that if you've done everything as far as all the work and had all the inspections along the way but failed to get a final, it allows you to reopen that permit for that final inspection. What we've had is people continually coming back and filing for a reinstatement over and over again, and then still doing work under that, which is not the appropriate manner in which to apply and use a permit. Our third one was on page 29, is just a clarification that if you bounce a check, have non-sufficient funds, that it's a $50 charge each time you do that. I think we had some conflict in our permits office where somebody felt like even though they did it 2 or 3 times, they should only be charged once. So this is just clarifying it for the staff so that they can point to the code and explain to the person that why they're getting charged what they're getting charged. And then an ICC change on page 109 is adopting requirements around shipping containers used in construction. This wasn't previously there, so we're adopting that. And then on page 152 is really coming into line, this is under the National Electrical Code, coming into line with where electrical power lines coming into a property, where there's a deck or a porch, how high they have to be. Our code had stated 8 feet. I think it had stated 8 feet for at least the last 30 years. And then we recently had a challenge to that, and when we looked into it, our inspectors had been enforcing 10 feet. And digging even deeper into that, we came to the conclusion that BG&E's requirements are 10 feet, and the National Electrical Code is 10 feet, and we were out of line with that 10-foot requirement. So this is just a correction to bring us in line, because if we only require 8 feet and BG&E comes out and refuses to hook up because it's not 10 feet, it doesn't help the customer. So best that we catch it on the front end and get them to fix it. So those are our significant changes in my mind. I know that there are a number of amendments, some from DHCD and some from other council members. So.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Hustler. So I read this bill cover to cover. It was, I think, 352 pages. But then I saw there's a lot of subcategories that weren't included. So I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. Previous pieces of legislation, and I'll give an example of one of my pieces of legislation, like the shed bill. Are all of that considered in this bill, and therefore we're not reversing previous legislation that has passed?
Correct. Nothing should have come out that was previous legislation unless it's specifically highlighted having come out.
Okay, so we're not reversing any action that the city council went through the legislative process to do?
No.
Okay.
We do not.
Perfect, thank you. The other thing that I noticed as reading through the bill repeatedly was a section that was not adopted, which is the refunds sections. Is there a reason why you guys didn't adopt any of those sections?
We have our own process for doing refunds, so it didn't match up with what's here in the ICC. Okay. So that's why, but where appropriate, we do issue refunds.
Gotcha. Okay. I have other questions, but I'll turn it over to any colleagues with questions. Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify the expiration of the building permit piece. Is that, so currently the code says that someone has up to 3 years for the final inspection to get the use and occupancy, is that correct?
Once the permit has expired, the code allows for 60 days to request an extension of that permit. So you can come and extend the permit and get another 6 months or 3 months time. It's when you've allowed the permit to lapse past that 60 days. If you want to get that final inspection, you have up to 3 years to request a reinstatement, and that will allow you the one inspection to get the reinstatement, assuming you qualify for it.
But that then just leaves the property not up to code for 3 years.
Potentially. So what ends up happening in some cases is, and this wouldn't apply in the sense of like a vacant property being rehabbed and needing a use and occupancy. But if a good example would be if you had a hot water heater installed and you didn't get that final inspection, you hired a company you were happy with, they applied for the permit, they may have called in for a rough-in inspection, but then no one ever called for that final. And then you're going to sell the house and the buyer says, hey, where's your final inspection on this hot water heater? That would be a good example of where being able to reopen the permit to get that final inspection makes sense. But all the work has to have already been completed, and all the other inspections have to be passed. So it's only that final inspection that was missing.
So that's what we're talking about in the cases where it's not a vacant and abandoned property. The vacant and abandoned property piece, they have to go for what I'm worried about is I just don't want people to keep reinstating permits without doing any of the work.
Yeah, and that's why we're trying to clarify it to only allow one reinstatement. Otherwise, they'd have to get new permits.
But it's a one reinstatement within 3 years.
Currently, it is, yes.
So this changes that to, the only
clarifying-
change is that it's just one reinstatement. I
Yes,
got
ma'am.
it. I got it. Okay, thanks. Thank you for that clarification. Thank you.
All right, Jason, on page 242, the top part, it talks about care facilities and talks about the automatic sprinkler system.
I was going to defer to the fire department on that one.
Okay, I'll hold that. 1 second. All right, the next two are for the fire department. Okay, what amount of time do you guarantee that an application is reviewed by? Somebody submits a review, submits an application. How long are we saying that there will be a review and comments provided within?
Those are not included within the code. We do have different guaranteed review times based on the different size project, and those are within the plans review system. We are currently undergoing a implementation of a new permitting system and plans review system, and along with that, we'll be updating those guidelines. We believe that this new system will help to expedite the permitting process. We're working very closely with all the agencies, but particularly fire, and bringing a lot of the systems that they use into this new system, so it will better streamline the process, including like scheduling inspectors. We are updating the plans review software. Right now, the software is called Project Docs. I think we're on like 2.1 version, and the version we should be on is 9.3. So that will create great efficiencies for everybody that's using it on both sides. And these are for commercial projects and larger residential projects.
And will DPW and DOT both be in that system for all of their permits?
They will be, for all the permits that come through DHCD, they will use our process. DPW has a separate, the BCNR system for soil erosion sediment review, which is separate. It uses the same Project Docs system, and they're actually on the updated version. So we're catching up to where they are.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what does the staffing levels look like in the plans review and inspections department under you?
Sure. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but within the permitting shop, we are currently hiring. We've had several people, several positions open up recently, and we've added 2 new positions into that department. So I think we're hiring 3 people. We just made an offer to an office support specialist yesterday, so we've been actively hiring there. Plans review on the DHCD side, we just made an offer to an office support specialist there, and we have 1 open position. It's the engineer associate position, which we're looking to try and change that to a position that can do both mechanical and green building. We don't currently have anyone that is specifically towards green building, and that's becoming more and more of something that we need to address. So we're working to change that position around. So use that PIN number to create a different position. Zoning has 3 openings for zoning review techs that we're recruiting for. And then within inspections, we just got an additional building inspection position, and we have a electrical position that was unfrozen. So we're hiring for all those. We just had 3 people advance from building inspector 1 to building inspector 2. So that gives us 4 building inspector 1 positions that are open within the building side and 1 on the demo side. All of those are being recruited currently. I don't remember off the top of my head the mechanical and electrical, but I want to say that there's 2 openings in both spots. Those are the 2 hardest positions for us to fill because you have to be a master electrician or plumber. And it's just difficult to find somebody qualified that wants that. Those are actually, I forget what the technical term is, but they're always posted, basically, continuous.
Gotcha. So that explains why these things are taking a really long time. So all these openings.
To some degree, I mean, it's, you know, some permits get issued within 24 hours, but they're
Yeah,
been,
some people win the lottery, but most people don't. So
the majority of permits get issued very quickly because they're, you know, they're not complex. The ones that need more review, you know, we're addressing that. So we, you know, right now I've got permit techs and inspectors that are all doing overtime work to help stay on top of it while we try to fill these positions.
All right, and you're going to need an additional reviewer just to cover all the legislation from Councilman Conway as well. So, all right, thank you. We'll move on to the next agency, DPW.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Marcia Collins, representing the Department of Public Works. We're here in support of this bill. We recognize that if we don't keep our codes relevant and work to make changes that through practice make sense, it just makes it all difficult for everyone, and we want people to be as safe as possible. The last time we looked at the building, fire, and related codes comprehensively was back in 2020. And we had a couple of amendments, one for the International Green Construction Code, your amendment for the shed exemption, and a third one for cool roofs. So, but those occurred in the interim period, and they were very specific issues. And as our good colleague from HCD has said, those remain in the code and haven't changed. There was very little that was changed in the code that impacted the Department of Public Works, but we did appreciate some of the clarifications, one of which was that the section about waste management and diversion of construction waste included demolition debris that was probably left out in error, and so it was just clarification, which we greatly appreciate. There was an issue with the splash pads and bathroom facilities. That clarification from a health perspective is very important. The assembly permits, the public areas, we appreciate. We sometimes know there's a lot of events going on throughout the year, and having advance notice of an activity in the public arena helps us as agencies prepare. There might be additional areas that will be getting a lot of trash. You maybe need to empty the area periodically, or there may be large crowds, and we might be asked to help out the police department for kind of blocking off areas with big trucks. And so advance notice is really important, and I know that the council's aware of that. And we appreciated the fact that there was a clarification about the code officials' decisions subject to administrative and judicial review to remove any confusion about that particular issue. Based on that, we're happy to support this legislation. We know it's important, and we'd be happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on what you were saying about the construction debris? Can you just explain that? There's
a section in the building, fire, and related codes where they talk about how a certain percentage of your debris needs to be recycled or repurposed. But they did make clear that it also included demolitions. So it's not just for when you're constructing new or rehabbing, it also applies to when you're doing demolition. So if there's a manner in which you can repurpose some of those materials, Baltimore bricks are very valuable to people up and down the East Coast. Any lumber that's usable, if it's an older building, some of the supporting members are very much more dimensional than they are today in current practice, those kinds of things. So we're just trying to divert things in an area that may find a new purpose.
So does it now require people to recycle those items, you're saying?
Yes, there's a percentage, and I apologize, I don't remember the exact percentage.
Anybody have any questions for DPW? Nope. Okay. Ben, you got anything?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Ben Guthorn for the Department of Legislative Reference. We're here just as support to the committee as needed.
So you're not for or against this bill?
We were not asked to provide any testimony today.
Oh, okay. Next up, DOT.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. My name is Marley Cardona-Mose. I'm here with the Baltimore City Department of Transportation. We found that this bill is consistent with the best practices for safety standards across the board. It'll have limited to no impact to the Department of Transportation. So we're here in support of this bill today.
Okay. Thank you. If I can just go back for a second to DPW, if we can just put in a request, if you can just email myself and the entire committee just the explanation and the numbers that you were talking about regarding the recycling requirements on construction debris, just so we understand the new piece, what it currently is and what it's going to be going to, just to understand that a little better.
Happy to do that, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, because I did notice that when I was reading through the bill, but then it references items and codes that are external from the bill. So there's subcategories that obviously wouldn't be caught in this.
I believe that section, I don't remember off the top of my head, but that was something that was added by council within the last 2 years, 3 years.
Okay. If you can just forward it to us
yeah.
just for clarity. Thank you. Fire Marshal. And first off, I just want to thank you for all the good work you've been doing. You've made a lot of changes and improvements and communication to the office, so I want to make sure that doesn't go unnoticed, so thank you for that. And I know by the time it gets to the Fire Marshal's office, people have lost all patience because they finally done with DHCD and they're ready for their occupancy, and you're the last guy, so you take a lot of the brunt. So I would suggest that, housing, DPW, DOT, maybe they, treat you to lunch one day for you taking the brunt of all the anger people have by the time they get to the final use and occupancy stage. But please go ahead.
Good afternoon. I'm the Deputy Chief
Just
Sean
pull this down a little bit. Can't hear you.
Good afternoon. I'm the Deputy Chief Sean Eames from the Office of the Fire Marshal. The Fire Department supports this bill, City Council Bill 24-0502. Our proposed amendments are limited to the clarifications to existing code sections in the 2021 International Fire Code. They can be found on pages 225, 241, 242, 243, and 244. BCFD respectfully requests a favorable report on the passage of this City Council bill. At this time, I can give you a brief overview of all our changes, if you would like.
Is that a new logo for the Fire Marshal's office?
It's been around for a while, sir.
Oh, okay.
You like it, sir?
Yeah, it looks nice.
All right, thank you. On page 225 is actually an existing section called Technical Assistant. The proposed amendment is to clarify a section that's already there. The fire department is authorized to ask for a technical or opinion or report on a complex or large project. The amendment identifies the type of projects that would require technical report. It also identifies the qualification of somebody that needs to prepare this technical report, and also identifies the items that are covered in it. Basically, some of our larger projects could be over 1,000 pages. And this is basically limited to large projects. It could cut down the amount of plan review that we do. This approach has been adopted in Prince George's County, Montgomery County, and Howard County. So rather than spending 60 hours reviewing a project, they do that on the front end, when by the time we review it, could take 8 or 10. So it just makes the whole plan review process. And again, these are only large projects. So the high-rise building that's associated with the University of Maryland, that plan set was 1,500 pages. It took me 40 hours to go do that. Versus if this third party had already looked at it, it could take 10 hours or 12 hours. So that's one code amendment. Page 241 is construction documents. This amendment provides additional clarification on the minimum requirements for any documents that are submitted for a plan review. Again, it's nothing new. It's just clearing up what needs to be on those documents. To your point, page 242, a sprinkler system for use group R3, that's already established in the International Building Code. What we're doing is give them, these owners, another option of being able to open up without putting that in. So in the fire department's opinion, if they would have self-closing 20-minute doors, a smoke alarm system that's monitored, and emergency rescue windows in each of the bedrooms would be the equivalent of providing that. You go from a $30,000 cost to maybe $2,000 or $3,000.
So you're giving them an extra alternative.
Yes.
You're not requiring that they do it this
Yes.
way. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. That answers that
The
question.
next section is page 242, alternative, is under the alternative automatic fire extinguishing section. This amendment has been proposed to provide notification of a fire suppression system activation to occupants located above a kitchen, a restaurant. This is already existing in the code right now. It's just clarifying it. Page 243, on the fire alarm system, again, this is already established, but we're just making sure that whoever prepares a fire alarm shop drawing is a design professional. They have training. Right now, anybody can submit those drawings. That's why you might get calls that I've received from you 2-3 times going through it. The person's not certified to do that. Now, this amendment will make that person have some type of training in that, and it will make the plan review process go quicker. And last but not least, this is a proposed amendment to not adopt in a section in the 2021 International Fire Code, which would eliminate the installation of fire alarm manual pull stations. Those are the boxes that you see at all the exits. The IBC allows in certain cases to not put those in. In the fire department's point of view, manual fire alarm pull stations are a critical component for activating the building's fire alarm system and notifying building occupants that a fire has happened. This amendment has been proposed to not allow that to happen, which will allow manual fire alarm pull stations to be put at every exit. That way, the likelihood that the fire alarm will be activated is actually greater. Okay. That's a brief synopsis of the changes.
So it's going to require that they do that, or?
I give you an example. You may have to put one manual fire alarm box. You might have 4 exits. What if that person, for some reason, it wasn't activated? It gives people that live in the building other exits the ability to activate it.
And is this only on new construction?
Yes, it's only well, any fire alarm that's being changed or renovated or a new use.
So when you say by any door, does that mean if it's going on in a condominium complex, every single unit will require its own?
So it will be for a new building or a level 3 alteration for an existing building. The best example I could give is the Under Armour new office building. They were only going to put 1 manual pull station. It had 4 exits. That building can hold 500 people. What if that person, they're exiting the building, it didn't go off? That gives other options for other people to activate it at different exits.
Right, but in the scenarios like what I'm mentioning, like the condominiums, if they're replacing their fire alarm
They
system,
should put a manual pull station at every exit. Yes, sir.
every exit of the building or every exit within the building?
Every exterior exit.
Of the building?
Yes.
Gotcha. So So there's a back door, there's a garage door, there's a
Yes.
front door, not each unit
Well,
going
no,
into the
right,
hallway.
it's each building exit, not each
Okay.
unit, not each individual dwelling unit exit.
Gotcha, okay, and what do those boxes roughly cost?
I would say around 150. Do you have any contradiction to that?
Depending on what the make and model is, they can range anywhere from 50 to, it would be really expensive if they were doing a Wi-Fi system. I've only seen 2 in the entire city. The price comes with conduit onto it, but usually if you have an existing, usually if you have an existing fire alarm system, your cost could be $150. And just to clarify, an example, if I go up to Park Heights, 17-story high-rise building that's got condos in it, we're not requiring or requesting it to be at every exit access door. Where you come out of your unit, you come down to an exit door, which is marked egress, and it's actually in the codes. That is exit access. When they come all the way down the stairs and they discharge out at exit level grade to get out of the building, that's where the manual pull station would be required. And the reasoning for that is if we went to current code where you had one pull station in the building and you had a fire on the 17th floor and your person who's doing fire watch can't get to that pull station, then nobody else knows. And this is for making sure that we have high occupancy, high density, and high probability of loss of life to be notified to get out.
Gotcha.
This is probably one of the most critical parts that we add to this code. Like, this is super
Okay,
important to us to add this to the code.
gotcha, okay, I appreciate that. Any questions, Council Vice President?
So this really goes into, I guess, continuing of an amendment that helped me think of the amendment that I can probably share since we're on kind of that piece. And just listening to you talking about, the importance of exiting, whether it's out of your apartment or in the building, it's and you had mentioned Park Heights and how that's going through a big redevelopment. There's new senior housing buildings and so on. And so this friendly amendment, I think, was really put together to really help the fire department. And also, since we're at a time where the mayor signed a bill to create the new Office of Older Adults and Advocacy, that we really kind of add some pieces in there to just really kind of help with senior buildings. And the amendment that was given to all of the committee members, and also had a conversation with Deputy Chief Ames. Did I get that right? Okay. And just really making sure that a written plan for emergency evacuation procedures are in place. And I think the other piece to that is having at least 3 emergency evacuation drills each year by the owner or the person responsible for the building, and they can confer with the fire marshal and have them look at the plan and just kind of tweak it, because remember, these buildings are also, for private owners, they're a business. So it's just good that we have all those things in place. Government can help them keep the plan together. And then also, we do have, should require fine, and it's not just for it's age 62 and over, or people that use mobility devices, including a wheelchair, crutches, so on. It's important that that piece is included. And then the structure of, I think, was added that building, housing, seniors, and individuals requiring mobility devices, I think is we put a $1,000 fine. So it's just, again, making owners or managers responsible. Remember, in senior buildings, too, there is a turnover of seniors as well, and it's important that they have those drills so they can remember how to exit. We have seniors that we know that dementia is growing, and you know, we just need to have that reputation of them repeating and learning how to do those drills. And I think 3 times a year is, you know, a significant number, and I don't think that would put a burden on the fire department at all. So,
All right.
he has his hand up down there.
Yeah.
The
Are you
councilman.
done?
But I'm finished.
Oh, you finished? Okay. Next up, Councilman Torrance.
I just want to thank the Vice President for offering that amendment. I just want to, which makes me think I need to add an amendment to your amendment, because we have a number of buildings that we have through RAT that have both seniors as well as persons who have mental health issues in our buildings. And I think that we need to maintain, and this is something I've gone through in my own district, requiring buildings to maintain an ambulatory list, because a lot of them don't know who is ambulatory, who has asthma, who is on crutches, who is actually in wheelchair bound. It's been an issue that we've discovered. And then I think that this is going to go through a separate bill that I've been thinking about, which is when we do have elevators down in high-rise buildings with seniors, that we have to require owners to have plans in place to offer compensation if they're ambulatory, if they can't reach their actual apartment that they're paying rent for.
If I can ask something, sir?
Yes.
There's already an existing code section that should cover that. Whether they're doing that, that's a separate issue. It's the IFC section 404. It's already there. They're supposed to do that anyway. But if you want to put an amendment to make it tougher or stronger, we can do that as well.
Yeah, I need to add persons with mental health conditions, because I say that because I have a building where a gentleman has schizophrenia, and there was no one that was aware of it and how to assist him until we had to call in the crisis response unit because of a fire in the building. He wouldn't leave. So I think that's something I think we need to think through, because now that we have now turned these properties over to private owners or private lessees, I'll say that because they're still our buildings, they should have a list and plans in place on how to deal with persons that we are doing in mixed unit complexes.
Thank you. Next up, Law Department.
Good afternoon, Elena DePietro for the Baltimore City Law Department. The Law Department reviewed this bill extensively, and we did have some questions about a few pieces of the bill, but we were able to discuss with HCD and the Department of Legislative Reference, and we're satisfied that our concerns were non-existent. So we are at this point, this version of the bill, able to approve it for form of legal sufficiency.
All right, thank you. Any agencies that I missed that wish to speak?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Tyler Chanel from the Mayor's Office of Government Relations, representing BMZA, who can be here today. They stand by their report, which is to defer to DHCD. Also speaking for the Department of General Services, who stands by their favorable committee report. And also for the Department of Planning, who stands by their report of no objection and deferral to the Department of Housing and Community Development.
Just one question. I think I know the answer, but not 100%. DGS, when they do work in city buildings, do they have to pull permits also?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I can follow up on that for you.
We could just ask the encyclopedia next to you.
Yes.
They do? Okay.
If it's inside a city building,
They pull permits.
city work that's exempt from our permits is stuff that's in the right of way. So DPW replacing pipes, DOT doing street lighting, that is not covered by our code. But any, rec and parks pulls permits when they're building a new rec center.
And they pay for those also, or is it?
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you. All right, any further questions before we start getting into amendments? Go ahead, Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to go back to the demolition piece, adding that it says in the building, in the current draft, that 70% of the construction or demolition waste has to be recycled. which is a lot bigger than percentage than I thought was the case. And so I just wanted to clarify what the avenues are for people who are doing rehab of buildings and houses, and that they, they're gutting a house, for instance, and they have to then, recycle the brick, and if it's recyclable, the mantles and some of it, the wood, et cetera, and I think, Deputy Commissioner, we've had conversations about this because I've been working on a deconstruction bill, but I haven't introduced it yet. I'm probably going to have to wait. But I wanted to just kind of touch base on that because at least what I'm seeing in the code right now says 70%, but then there's no sort of specifics about what the material is, how the enforcement happens, and, I feel like we're going to have to create an industry around this, which is, I think, what you've talked about. So can you clarify a little bit about what the intent is by adding the demolition in here? Or I think it's just clarifying what's already established.
Yeah, this is really an unchanged section, so this is what's existing code. I completely agree with you, Councilwoman, that an industry around this is necessary. There's only so much that, a group like Second Chance or Goodwill Home Services, whatever that name is, can provide or, accept and do. My colleague from DPW mentioned the recycling of bricks, but not all of our rehab involve bricks.
Correct.
And not all of the bricks in a demolition job or a rehab job are quality bricks that somebody could reuse in a construction project. They might be able to be ground up into some landscaping or something else, but it's an area that hopefully will grow and probably does need some assistance in growing. So I think we're on the same page there.
But so what this does is just take the standard, I thought it was 30%. That's why when I saw 70% here recyclable, that seemed different, and I missed it in my initial review of the bill. So we're not anywhere near that right now.
No, this is what the standard's been for the last 3 years, 4 years.
Right.
I can't give you a number as to where every project is, and it's also difficult because it's non-hazardous. So there's it's not 70% of the entire project, because if you're ripping out plaster and walls.
Oh,
and that
yeah,
kind of
you have to
stuff,
define what the non-hazardous is.
yeah, that's going to be lead paint, and you're not going to be able to do anything but dispose of that. Even the case with bricks too. We've had asbestos jobs that have been determined to be have friable asbestos, and even the bricks are considered contaminated at that point, which I guess if you're not into the science of that, you would not think that, a solid brick would take in asbestos, but it actually does. So all that has to be hauled off and disposed of properly as asbestos waste.
Right, but we currently don't have a system of monitoring that internally right now either.
No, not internally. With the new permitting system, we have added in the requirement of updating those plans, and that'll be
That will be one of the
required-
standards, yeah,
a
okay.
required field, and we're collecting some data around that. So that should help us get a little closer. And then we have been working with the Sustainability Committee on work around this, state laws and just other projects that could be done to help support the reuse and recycling of building materials.
Okay, so thank you, I appreciate that. We're just not there yet, so it sounds like there's a lot more work to do, and this is the standard that's set by the International Building Code, but we're just still not there yet, so we want to get there. Okay, thank you.
All right, public testimony time. I see Sarah Matthews. If you can hit the right button, and the microphone should light up red.
Yep.
Fire safety is important, especially to the disabled population. Greeting Chairperson Slifer and your Compassionate Rules Legislative Oversight Committee. Again, my name is Sarah Matthews, founder and co-chair of the Empowerment Team, also a resident living in an older adult residential housing complex in Baltimore City. Since retiring, I've been living in an older adult building for approximately 13 years. And during this period of time, I have never participated or been informed of a fire drill, either one of the buildings that I've lived in, which is Weinberg Manor East and Linden Park Apartment. No mention of fire drills or instructions on how to exit my unit or building in the case of a fire. It doesn't even our fire alarm doesn't even operate properly. It goes off any time of the day, any time of the night, and the fire department down the street from us have to waste their valuable time to come and turn it off. The residents would like to personally thank whomever came up with this innovative and much needed amendment to add 3 fire drills to older adult buildings throughout the year. As you are probably aware, we had an older adult who perished in a fire in Lakeview Towers Senior Apartment some years ago. And there will be other deaths if annual fire drills are not made mandatory in senior residential housing in Baltimore City. I'm here to support this much needed amendment 100%, and I'm asking that this committee pass this amendment and schedule it for vote of the full City Council to promulgate it immediately. It is approximately 143,000 older adults living in these complexes, and we need your advocacy and protection. Therefore, again, I'm here on behalf of the 143,000 older adults and the empowerment team. We would like, and we plead with you for our safety, for our lives, to adopt this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to testify? If so, please come up to the microphone. Seeing none, we will proceed.
Mr. Chair, I just want to just publicly add, I think there was some written just testimony too that people had sent in on this particular amendment.
Okay.
For the record.
Sounds good. So we're going to jump into the amendments. We can do this one of a few ways. We could do them all as a packet. That's what we'd prefer to do. If anybody wishes to pull out any single amendment, then we will pull it out and vote on it separately. But otherwise, we could do it that way, or we could also just go through each person's amendments and then decide voting it that way. So is there any objection to just doing it all as a packet?
Mr. Chair, but does that still allow for discussion for each of the amendments?
Yeah, I mean, the committee can discuss whatever they'd like to. If anybody has any questions, they can ask the questions. But
Okay.
yeah, I mean, we're gonna present them, and then the wish of the committee is to vote them as a packet. If there's any unreadiness, happy to pull it out and do separate votes. Save us a lot of time instead of doing a separate vote for every amendment. So I will start with my amendments. So, there's when I was reading through the bill, I noticed a bunch of different stuff. And as somebody who gets a lot of constituent calls about permitting issues.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. We don't have your amendments.
Richard, did you hand them out? I gave you the thing to hand out. Yeah. He said he handed them out. If not, can you give him an extra copy? So,
May I have a copy?
I receive a lot of.
There aren't any amendments in the packet that was sent out.
I receive a lot of constituent requests regarding permitting issues, and one of the things that I found is that there's a lot of challenges, and I appreciate DHCD and everybody who's working towards a new, updated, streamlined system. But even when we have that new system, there will still be challenges, and so I think that the posture of the city should be one that we try to make it as easy as possible for people to do things the correct way. There's a tremendous amount of frustration that goes into getting certain permits, especially when there's one hiccup or one issue that comes into play. If it's not just a basic, hey, I'm replacing my hot water tank, there's a lot of challenges that require a lot of communication and multiple people and calling agencies that really don't have much to do with that specific permit, but they still need to sign off. And then once we get everything together, there still needs to be a link, and the link doesn't get sent. There's always a bunch of issues. And so the posture of the city, in my opinion, should be that we should make it easier, which I think everybody's working towards, but also that we should be a lot more accommodating towards helping people do that. And I have some larger plans around that, which I will discuss during the budget process. But as far as this bill is concerned, I think it benefits everybody in the city if we could be more accommodating and more understanding and make things easier for people to do the correct thing, because I'm not going to throw a percentage out there, but I would say that a large portion of work that's being done in the city is being done without a permit, even by folks that are using licensed contractors. They simply say it's adding too much time, or it's too much bureaucracy, or there's too many challenges, and so they just opt to do it without the permit. And obviously we would prefer people to do it with a permit. And so that's kind of the underlining theme with most of my amendments. So I'll start with the first one on page 21. On page 21, on line 1, basically, the application for an extension must be made within 60 days after the permit expires. My wish is to increase that 60 days to 180 days. Same thing lower down on line 7, that an extension request should be made before the permit expires. What I am requesting is to allow within 90 days of the permit's expiration date. A lot of times people don't realize their permit expired until after it's already expired. And so what I've seen firsthand is that when you say to somebody, oh, I'm sorry, you did all this work, you paid all these permits, and you missed the deadline, or your permit expired, so you got to come back and do it. And I know, Mr. Hessler tries to do everything he can to help them. At the same time, when the answer is, I'm sorry, we can't help you, we can't extend it, they say, you know what, we're just going to go off track and no longer do it with a permit, which I do not think is anybody's desire here. So that's the reason for that one. Amendment number 2 on page 27 in line, go ahead. On line 1, instead of it being 60, increasing it to 180 days. And on line 7, and striking before the permit expires and substituting it within 90 days of the permit's expiration date. So if a permit expires and you realize it expired, instead of being out of luck, you have within 90 days to come back and extend your permit. Okay? Amendment number...
I'm sorry, may I interrupt?
Sure.
For your amendment number 1, where you're looking at the 180 days, I understand where you're coming from with the 60 days. I have some concerns over the length of time being 180 days. And then with the second part of that amendment, could we possibly align the two so that they're both 90 days?
Is there a reason why 90 days instead of,
Well, at the point that the permit is expired, the person shouldn't be doing any work anyway. So having them have a 6-month gap where they can come back to start doing work, I think causes a large gap. It's going to cause concern among neighbors. You also fall into situations with code changes and other things that may happen, whether it's this 3-year cycle or someone's put together a bill to change something.
Sure.
And
gotcha, okay. I'm open to that, so I'll cross out 180 and make it 90 on line 1. Amendment number 1, on the first line, instead of substituting 60 for 180, we make 60 to 90.
Okay, so take out 180 and insert 90.
Yeah. Amendment number 2 on page 27, line 22. Okay. That's also striking the days. I think if we want to be consistent across the board, I would ask that we also switch that to 90 days instead of 60. So if the application for extension is made, that has to be consistent, right? So if that extension is made within 90 days after the permit expires, then the fee for extension is $25.
Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, where are you?
Oh, I see. Okay, so we'd have to strike, sorry, the next line, we have to strike 180 and make that 90. So if the extension is made within 30 days after permit expires, it's 25. If it's 31 to 90, then it would be 50%. Go ahead. Is that what you're?
No, I just wanted to revisit amendment number 1 quickly, just to clarify the intent, if we can for a moment.
Sure.
In section 105.5, which is the second part of the First Amendment, we're saying that for a permit issued to comply with a condemnation notice or demolition order, the application for an extension must be made within 90 days of the permit expiration date. Is that before or after the date of expiration? I just want to clarify because we may want to make that a little more clear.
Well, the 90 days would be within 90 days of the permit's expiration date, so it could be 3 months after the fact. That's the whole,
Okay.
yeah.
So instead of saying within.
Because right now, it's until it expires. You have to do it before it expires. So what we're doing is offering a 3-month grace period that, hey, you did this, you didn't get to that point, you're not ready for that piece, you have to, you need to get that extension for whatever reason. There's all type of environmental reasons and other things that come up, so you're getting that grace.
Could we perhaps reframe it, and I'm doing this on the fly, to try to clarify and say within 90 days of the date the permit expired, or something to that effect? I'll work with you on the language in a minute, but
These are your words, so if you'd like to change your words, you're welcome to do so.
frequently.
As
Thank
long as
you.
we have the same end result.
And then just to get ahead of this, when we eventually do get to amendment number 7, I circulated to yourself and staff, as well as the departments here, an updated version that just corrects some omitted language by my department that was an error. So you have that in your inbox. I just want to make sure that you know that.
Okay, I'll let you present that once we get up to 7.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, going back, give me 1 second. Okay, on page 43, line 9, after the word parts, insert if all work authorized by the building permit has been satisfactorily completed and a certificate is not issued within 10 days of receiving the written application, the building official will refund the permit holder $500 in permit fees for each day the permit is not issued. So this, Jason, gets to the refunds that we were discussing. So being that it looked like from reading the bill that there was no refund section adopted, what is the recourse? We know that we fine applicants when they don't do something that they're supposed to do when they're supposed to do it. So is there any refunds currently on the books if you don't issue the certificate by the date that this bill requires you to issue?
So no, there's nothing like that on the books. The refunds that I was referring to earlier is in reference to if a person is overpaid or double paid or something of that nature. So it's not a penalty against the city for the time it takes or any kind of negative action there. Obviously, the agency would have some concern over the implementation of this. Many permits that we issue don't even amount to $500 in fees. So returning $500 in fees per day becomes a windfall to someone. In addition, I think it opens up, I've been a prosecutor for too long, but I think it opens up an avenue for potential fraud within the agency or, the staff. It
Right. So
concerns me.
Right. So the bill has a timeline, right? Within 10 days of written application, the building official will issue a certificate of completion. So again, each piece of the bill has fees. When there's penalties, they accrue every day, and they amount to large sums. When that happens, you issue fines that are often $500,000 per day. Every day is a new offense, right? So that works in reverse against the applicant. But then the question here is, without having some type of compensation for the applicant, what recourse do they have? So if you don't do what you're supposed to in your agency and you don't provide this within 10 days, what ends up happening is you're costing the applicant a lot of time and money, certainly more than any value here. If a project gets delayed by a day or two or a week or a month, those costs amount to huge sums of money. So the fact that the bill is giving over a timeline, saying that this is what you will do, if you don't do that, what is the recourse for the applicant?
Yeah, no, we share that concern. It is in the city's best interest to make sure that permits are issued timely, that inspections occur timely, that we are being pro-development, whether it's the development of your individual property and adding a deck or a pool or something of that nature, or a downtown skyscraper. Construction projects properly done are generally good for the city, and we want to be able to attract the development. I think we are making significant changes to address a lot of the concerns that you've had and shared with us. A couple of problems with this in particular is that certificate of completion is a thing in the code. The only time a certificate of completion is given is when it's requested by and most people don't request a certificate of completion. Now, in respect to new construction or change of use or rehab of a vacant building, you've got a use and occupancy permit, which I think kind of you're getting at with the certificate of completion. Those are issued upon the final inspection. They go out within an hour or two of the final inspection, because the final inspection, that piece that submits this is the building inspection. So if it's a huge project, fire and health have gone out and signed off, building is the last inspection that is scheduled by the applicant. And when the building inspector goes out there and passes it, come back to the office and they enter their results, that permit's issued. The fees have already been paid on the front end. Everything else has been processed, so it's just waiting for that last inspection. So I don't know that we're really getting to what you're looking for.
So I had one of the larger projects in my district recently, had gotten everything completed. Their note on the building they had to deliver the building by a certain date. there was a lot of challenges that came on, even though the project was professionally done by top builders, and there was a lag between when things were issued, things were completed, everything was done. Well, the link wasn't available to make a final payment, and that was done, and then, there wasn't, they didn't receive their certificate, it wasn't issued correctly. So I'm just saying, like, there are examples recently that have happened, and there are times that we're causing a tremendous financial damage to folks who are doing things the correct way, that the code is requiring us to do. And so if we're not taking some responsibility or ownership and showing some good faith in return, then why even have this in the code? Why not just say the certificates of completion or use and occupancy will get to you as soon as we can get it to you?
Mr. Chair, I appreciate your questions, and I think what you're trying to accomplish here, I think, makes a lot of sense. We certainly want to make sure that city services are prompt and moving expeditiously, of course, especially in times where projects are counting on these permits and use and occupancies to come through. I sort of wonder if, and I'm also on the fly here, if there's a way to provide sort of an expedition of sorts to speed it up for certain applicants should they pay an extra fee or some sort. For instance, we know in this deal, it may have totally ruined a deal or really kind of cost them a ton of money, and an additional whatever number of dollars would have been nothing for them to see this done on time, but would have provided some incentive for the city to move a little bit more quickly and help them do so in time to land the deal. So I'm also on the fly, we may not even legally be able to do this, but I sort of asked the question as food for fodder.
And, Mr. Chair, and also I think that, given that this is obviously would be a cost on the city, the permits, the funds from the permits going to the general fund, this is a hit to the general fund. So this is something that will require much more analysis, with the finance department to see what the impact will be on the general fund as a result of the city having to issue refunds $500 each day that a permit is not issued.
So just to clarify that, so I hear where you're coming from, and obviously it wouldn't be able to exceed the value of the permits. So like Mr. Hessler stated, a lot of times the permits that they're applying for are less than that, but I think that kind of loses the point when we talk about that there might be a hit to the general fund. Understand what we're saying is do as we say, not as we do. So you have you have thousands of pages of code that you got to follow when you're doing a project, when you're investing in the city, and if you do not do that in the correct manner, we will fine you. Every day is a new offense, which I'm going to get to in my next amendment. But the city, there's a few places in the city code where it actually requires the city to do something, and all I'm saying is a law and a rule isn't really a law and a rule unless there's some type of consequence to it, right? So if speeding is illegal, but you can't get a speeding ticket, it's not really a law, right? It's not a rule, right? It's just a suggestion. And so in these cases, that's kind of where I'm at on it. And so I think that, if the position from the administration is that, hey, this is something that, we don't want to take a hit on, I think that what you should be saying is, hey, let's let's make sure that we follow the city code, just like we're asking everybody else to follow the city code, so that we don't take it, because that's a choice. It's a choice not to follow this in that way. But Councilman, you have a question?
No, I hear you, Mr. Chair, but the lawyer in me is just like screaming because there's a claims process for that, right? Because force majeure, I think about when we had COVID and we couldn't do this. That means we would be paying thousands of dollars in fees. And we as a city would not have a way through the legal process to make that person whole. The other piece, and I say this because there's two things that just struck out from a legal sense. There's unjust enrichment, because I've seen in my district where we've had this complaint that they didn't get to the completion date, just so that they can exercise a claim against the underwriting for the actual project. And that means that on top of the underwriting for the actual project, which will be writing them a check for the delays that will be caused by us as well as them, that means that they will be getting a fee from us as well. Whereas our law department will see that they received a claim from their underwriting, which means that we don't have to pay because their underwriting would have covered the costs. I think a good way of getting to your expectation for wanting us to do prompt service is looking at means for recourse in terms of an appeals process where they can apply for some fees back or an abatement, which doesn't get us into an estimated number, because a court sees this in legal document and they're just going to come up with all these damages that we have to pay, and we're all going to be like, that's a hit to the general fund. Right. I think I'm happy to work with you on getting there in a way where they can go through a claim process that we can articulate through the law department. But just to put that number out there, it leaves us open to a lot of spaces where we're taking a hit to the general fund without it being estimated.
Yeah, so I hear where you're coming from. I don't think that pertains specifically to this. Twofold. Number one, it would only apply to the maximum amount that the permits cost. So if the permits in this scenario cost $750 in total, well, basically after 2 days, they get a refund of their permit. And really all I'm saying here in this, and I'm happy to, I'm happy to move on to the next one, but it also is essentially just talking about customer service. If we're providing a service and the service isn't provided, well, then why should we pay for the service? And this isn't one of those situations, like I didn't apply this to, hey, if you don't issue a permit on building an addition within 90 days, then all the money's back. As much as I would love to do that so that there would be a lot more movement in the permit office, I understand the challenge with them. There's a lot of back and forth and people can self-sabotage. This specific portion of the code deals basically at the end of a process. Once everything is complete, everybody's on the same page with where we stand at that point. It's completed. At that point, all the city needs to do is issue a piece of paper. And I'm telling you that I've seen in my district that there's been delays and there's been issues. And if the city code did not say, give a specific timeline, I wouldn't be necessarily adding it to it, because that would be getting to the point that you're saying where we're creating, this undue burden. I just think that if you looked at the permitting office and you say, hey, they're providing a service, which they are, it's a valuable service. Some things they charge a lot less than they should, and some things they charge more than they should. But they're providing a service, and if one day the permitting office decided, hey, you know what? We're all going to take 2 months off of work, and we're going to all take vacation at the same time, and no permit got issued in the city, why in the world should those folks who are experiencing far more damage than the cost of those permits pay for permits that they're not getting? So here, this is really just a light thing. It's not a very common thing, but because it's in the code, I think that's something worth considering. But I've circled it, and I'm willing to pull that out if there's unreadiness.
And I'm willing to work with you on the language, because I hear you and I want to get there too. My legal background is telling me not to put that explicitly in writing. Elaine is probably looking at me too, because force majeure, I'm thinking when we had ransomware and we had no access to computers. Imagine if this happened when we had ransomware and we had this in the code.
Sure.
So I think that
And
there has to be an appeals process that may have to be articulated in a different way that gives them the power to look at it holistically.
So I'm going to tell you and I'll move on after this, and I've circled this one, so I will be pulling it out of my packet. But from my business experience, going to business school right up the street at University of Baltimore, we have to understand that we are providing services and we're charging fees for those services. And when you want to present something and say, hey, this is the way things should be, if things are not done this way, you will have to pay these fines, and every day you don't do it is a new fine, and we're going to do it. One of the first things that I was taught in business school is any good deal, any good arrangement works the same in both ways. So if there's something that's fair for you to put on me, you should be willing to accept that in return. And so if me and Councilman Conway purchased this laptop together, and it was $2,000, and we each paid $1,000 for it, and we split it, 1 week at a time each, and it's just not working, and I say, hey, Councilman Conway, this isn't working, and he says, well, okay, give me $1,000 to buy me out, I should be willing to take $1,000 also for him to buy me out. It should work both ways. And so if we're putting a burden on our customers and our constituents, we should be willing to accept the same responsibility in return. Nonetheless, I'll move on to amendment number 4. On page 44, on line 8, enforcement generally. So it says if a violation is not promptly discontinued or abated, if the violation notice or order is not completed with promptly, the building official may institute or cause appropriate legal proceedings and enforcement proceedings. So all I'm asking for here is to basically give a defined period of time, abated within 14 days of the issuance of a violation notice, and then strike promptly and substitute within 14 days of the issuance of a violation notice, so that each day starts after that 14-day period. So if you come into a location and there's an issue and you provide a violation, that we are giving people an opportunity to fix that violation, which I know you already do that, but I think that there needs to be clarity there so that things are consistent and equitable across the board, that you identify an issue, you issue a violation, and instead of coming back and saying, well, you issued that violation at 4:59 today, and then you show up again tomorrow morning at 7:01, which, we all know that that's, those things have been done, that we're just giving people a reasonable amount of time to fix the situation. Go ahead, Mr. Hessler.
Yeah, so I appreciate the spirit of the amendment. I would say that this actually would reduce the time that most violation notices, or most people that receive a violation notice would have to correct. Majority of our violation notices, and we probably issue about 30,000 violation notices a year, I would say probably 80% of those go out with a 30-day correction time frame. And even at that point, when we come back on that 30-day time frame, we're, with the exception of a handful of extreme situations, at that point, we're posting the notice, we're still trying to make contact with the owner, and they're then getting another 30-day extension or more, depending on when we're able to re-inspect. So we're never really hitting that 14-day. Now, we do have 10-day notices, which are issued for sanitation violations, high grass and weeds, trash, debris, trash cans, that kind of stuff. And then we have what we refer to as emergency notices, which are 24, 48, or 72-hour notices. Those are only issued for smoke or carbon detector violations, lack of hot water, lack of heat, or when a soil pipe has busted. So there you're having generally always a rental property where a tenant is living in an unsafe condition. And when those occur, our inspection protocol, while we do issue that notice and give that short time to correct, while we're at the property, we're trying to make contact with the property owner and explain to them what's going on, because our goal is to get that property back up and in good shape as quick as possible. Make sure that the tenant has heat, or that the waste in the basement is cleaned out, whatever it may be. It's only in extreme situations where we're taking somebody to court, or on day 11 or day 31, and generally it rises to either it's an extreme situation because the impact it's having on neighboring properties, or the danger it has on the occupants. So over my 20-plus year career, a handful of times have we ever done anything like that, or gone out and issued, which is not covered by this amendment or this section of the code, issued citations on a daily basis. We often have council members or others press us to cite somebody every single day with a $50 or $100 or $500 citation, or $1,000 citation. And our stance has always been that, we send that citation out, we give 10 days before we would revisit it and give another, because it has to have a chance to get there and for them to correct the behavior. The whole purpose of a notice or a citation is to correct the violation or the error. So I think.
Quick question, Deputy Commissioner. You mentioned the emergency notices. How much time do you typically give for the emergency notices?
Between 24 and 72 hours. Depends on the severity of the situation, the living conditions. And a lot of times that's so that at the expiration of that, we can go in and take action. If we need to get DPW involved or the fire department involved to pump out a basement or clean something up because we don't think the landlord's going to do it at all, and we don't have some place to place this tenant, it sometimes is cheaper for the city to clean it out, repair it, and keep them in the property that they're supposed to be paying rent for.
That makes total sense. Is that anywhere else in the code?
The timing?
Sort of emergency sanitation, and do we have any delineation?
It's not.
of those?
It's the policy that the agency has established. It was that way before I started there. It hasn't changed in over 20 years, probably 30 or 40 years, I imagine.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Thank you. In line with what my colleague was just asking, I think that it's a humongous frustration for our residents who we encourage people to call 311. A violation notice is issued, then we don't see anything happening. We also don't know whether they even paid the fine, right? Or especially if it's not been abated, right? Then a work order has to be created to get the high grass and weeds and all that kind of stuff. So I think that where I understand where you're coming from on this amendment, I think you're hearing from Mr. Chair and my colleagues that there has to be more transparency about this so that we can set expectations with our residents we're encouraging people to call 311. And it says, and I know I have like 3 bills that I put in to make sure that we can use violations that says a new violation is another $1,000 per day, and yet that's not even happening. And the whole goal was to be able to stack up all the liens. So I think that, we're trying to figure out the best way to understand what's actually happening, and being very specific about it and putting it, if it's not in the code anywhere, we need to know what that is so we can explain to residents. But also I would say that certainly curing a vacant building notice is going to take more than 30 days. But they could actually put in a permit to let people know that they're actually going to do something. 14 days makes sense, because it should be done in 14, if we're going to give them a violation notice and they are going to do something with the property, then, they should be putting in a permit to be able to say, okay, you're going to try to cure the violation. So I just want to echo that I understand where my colleague is coming from. Not sure about the 14-day here, but if it's different citations and different days for different things, and we don't know that, and the residents don't know that, it's extremely frustrating. So I think we just need to be more transparent about it. If promptly gives us the word promptly, which is in here, gives the department that flexibility to set what those are, we need to know what those are.
And it sounds like DHCD just communicated that. It's an administrative process that they have internally. that they've had for 30 or 40 years. So I'm a little
We have
confused as to
never,
what.
I have been on the council for now almost 4 years. I have never gotten an email or a piece of paper that says emergency citation 10 days, 14 days for high grass and weeds, 30 days for this, that, the other. I'm pretty good at looking at my emails, and I know I have not received that. And so if that is something that is available, that would be super. And that way, I think it might address what we're trying to deal with here.
Sure.
Thank you.
I think that we can definitely provide that and also dedicate space on our webpage to kind of explaining that process. Obviously, the person that's receiving whatever violation notice is getting it, and it's telling them the amount of time. The other piece, I mentioned earlier that we're updating our permitting system, but along with that, we're also updating the enforcement system. And the resident portal for that app will be, people will be able to log in and see a lot more information than they can currently see in our website and our software now. So not just with somebody who applied for a permit, but also a neighbor that's looking at a permit or a neighbor that's looking to see what are the open notices on a property. So they'll get a lot more information, and it'll also be in a format, whether they're working on a desktop, a laptop, a tablet, or a phone, it will shrink to the right size and be more readable, so it'll be a lot more user-friendly. So that is something I think that will help address that transparency, but we can definitely commit to providing something that outlines our enforcement strategies.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, if I can, just to follow up, I would also suggest that maybe we take a look at that list and make some suggestions as to tightening those timeframes, particularly for a lot of the purposes that we're trying to get in our districts. And obviously, it's a regulatory process and a policy that you've made internally, but I think we probably have our opinions about how tight that timeframe should be, but I think we can certainly work with the department on that when the time comes. Thank you.
All right. So I'm actually looking at a letter here from Baltimore Housing from 2016, and I'm also looking at a more recent one as well. And there's not specific dates, like a timeline of when certain things have to be corrected by. Yeah, I mean, I'll show it to you. I'll show it to you after. I don't think you want me reading it here, but I'd be more than happy to. But I don't think you want that. But the bottom line is that if there's not a set period of time that's codified, where there's a minimum, right, where we're giving people the opportunity to correct something, then we leave it to complete discretion. We can't have it both ways. We can't say, hey, when the city's required to do something within 10 days and we don't do it, don't hold us accountable. We shouldn't have to refund you your money that you paid. There should be no recourse. But then on the flip side, when you get a violation notice, there's an undisclosed amount of time or whatever whoever's issuing the violation notice says. You have 10 days, 20 days, 30 days, 40. Look, the bottom line is that, you make a good point when it comes to the emergency stuff. And so what I'd like to do is amend this amendment to exclude emergencies. Emergencies obviously depends on the emergency. We're not going to sit here defining every single type of emergency that could happen, but non-emergency things. So somebody goes ahead and does something that they get a violation notice over, that you're given a minimum of 14 days, that's all, so that we can come back and harass them just because a council person or community association president or somebody comes ahead and says, hey, you need to do this and we need this. Look, give them 14 days. You got to be reasonable. This goes both ways. So anyways, that's what I like to do. I like to add excluding emergencies. And I'll wait for Ben to come back. On amendment number 4.
Mr. Chair, just as I think that there are more categories than just the emergency one. Is that correct? That is.
No, this is look, Mr. Hessler said that they're doing more than this. So I think it's a pretty easy ask to just say, hey, let's offer this as a minimum, because you can have a new code inspector who's extremely excited and goes ahead and says, oh, you did this, and here's a violation notice, comes back the next day and the next day and the next day and the next day and the next day. Give somebody 14 days. They're giving them already more than that, so it's a minimum of 14 days.
After violation notice, we're going to include excluding emergency.
Correct. Amendment number 5 on page 60. You have a question?
Mr. Chair, can we have them promulgated in an administrative regulation will specify dates, times, or time periods? Because I know typically in the General Assembly in the state, if you specify a certain violation, they have to publish on their website, if X does blah, 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 you have to put in said chart 30 days so that it is in a simple place. They do it with NBA, the amount of times that you have to cure, but the Assembly doesn't specify the actual time. It doesn't actually specify the dates. Because if it's 14 days and they can do it within 7, I don't want to give anybody 14 days if they can do it within 7. I mean, I'm just thinking about, I think that I'm more thinking about the data-driven approach, because if I'm seeing that you're addressing this in 7 days, then the expectation is a service level of 7 days versus the 14 days. Just a suggestion that we make them promulgate the actual specific dates and the timelines for, if it's 30 days for this specific type of violation, that is published publicly on a website so people know, and that they know that it's 30 days. This violation is 14 days. This violation is 7 days. This violation is 10 days. Just so it's public. Because there might be ways that if they sometime tomorrow get 700 new code enforcement agents, they may have some more dates. They may be able to address this faster.
Okay, amendment number 5 on page 63 on line 10. It's talking about notices. And so in line 10, it says the right of the person to whom the notice is directed to request a hearing within 10 days of the date on which a notice is served. And I'd like to strike that and make that 21 days. So somebody's away on vacation and they receive a notice at their office that they still have some time to request a hearing and due process. Now, if they're taking 3-week vacations, I guess they're out of luck, but 10 days is certainly not a lot of time. Amendment number 6 on page 128. On page 128, line 20, strike the word 1 and insert 3. And so what this is talking about is public review. Like Ms. Matthews testified before, that there hasn't been a lot of discussion on bills like this in the past, and so there needs to be more public meetings and comment opportunities. And so anytime we have an opportunity to increase public engagement, I think it's worthwhile. And so when it talks about public review, the general provision article, all proposed rules and regulations under this charter must be published for public comment for at least 45 days. During the public comment period, the director must hold 1 or more public hearings on the proposed rules and regulations, at least one of which must begin between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. And so as we did, as the administration has done for different appointments and other important pieces of legislation and positions, just asking that we increase that to 3 public meetings.
Quick question, Mr. Chair, would virtual count?
Yeah, this doesn't get into the method of how the meeting is. It just says how many meetings.
Okay. I guess that question would then go to the law department. Would virtual count as a public meeting?
I did not see these amendments prior to the hearing at all. I got them at 2:38.
Okay. I think it's a good idea. It gives more of an opportunity for public input. My thought here is just if we can make it easier to hold the meetings by making them virtual, I think it helps also with accessibility for folks who aren't able to make it into the city. So.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, my amendment doesn't touch on that, so either one would be fine. My last amendment, amendment number 7, I will turn it over to the good fellow from the 6th floor for explanation.
Certainly. So in response to the prior conversation about the 14-day grace period before DHCD would be permitted to start enforcement of a violation notice, this amendment captures the same concept, just in a slightly different portion of the code. The updated amendment corrects for certain omissions in this original draft. I can read it to everybody if they're so interested.
We're very interested.
Of course. So beginning on page 231, in line 31, bear with me, here we go. Okay. You would be striking, it currently reads, each day that a violation continues after the service of notice is a separate offense. The updated language with the amendment would have it read, striking the phrase each day and inserting, if a condition is not discontinued or abated within 14 days from the issuance of a violation notice, each day thereafter that a violation continues after service of notice is a separate offense. Any questions about that one?
Ben, I have a question. Are we
Yes,
talking
sir.
about 14 actual days or 14 business days? I just want to be clear because in city code, we have business days versus actual days. And
So general provision would have you understand the statement of days as not specified, be the business or calendar, to just reference calendar days.
okay. Just want to make sure.
Thank you. Moving right along. Next up is,
Mr. Chair, for the notes. Everything else.
yeah, for the, we're pulling amendment 3 for the time being.
So we got 6 total.
Correct. Next up, and I'll turn it over to my colleague to my left here, is an amendment number 1 offered by Councilman Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a very simple one. What this would do is require that, we can reference it in the code, but on page 175, after line 6, it would insert exhaust outlets serving crematoriums shall be installed at least 200 feet from the property line of any adjacent property. This is a very sort of straightforward way to ensure health, safety, and welfare of folks in communities that border funeral homes that technically have the authority to apply for a crematorium. So it's very straightforward. Any questions? More than happy.
Colleagues, any questions?
I do have a comment, Mr. Chair.
And I'd like to comment as well, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Sure. Law Department?
Sure. When I first reviewed this, I had not seen it and had little time, but as I looked at it more, I do have one concern that there are other provisions in the International Fire Code that discuss exhaust systems and distances from various points that have to be maintained. None of those distances exceeds 30 feet, and this distance would be 200 feet. So I think in order to determine that the regulation isn't so onerous as to prevent any use of the property that has an exhaust system, I think we need to establish that there are reasons why 200 is necessary. Otherwise, I think you're going to be subject to a challenge on this one.
Yes. So once again, the purpose here is for health, safety, and welfare. Of course, there are going to be instances in which funeral homes are operating in very small or narrow lots that are going to be in dense communities, during which time that exhaustive system is going to be very close to homes, schools, businesses, and otherwise, for which is probably not ideal for those areas. So the push here is you want to make sure that there's enough room within a given lot so that they can have some room to breathe. So that's the goal.
Right. I think that you need to be more specific then. Like if the adjoining property is 10 feet away, then the exhaust system has to be a certain distance away from the property line.
The reason why we decided to do property line is because every property is next to another property. So
Right.
by the very nature of,
I just think you might run into a problem with the existing fire code provisions regarding how to distance these exhaust systems. And they cover quite a large variety of circumstances. And I think it's possible that what you're doing falls under one of the existing provisions. I don't know, I'm not a mechanical engineer, and I don't know the exact reasoning behind all this, but I think you have to be reasonable and you can't prevent the use of the property.
Yeah. So the thought here in providing a setback is that, we're not stopping it from happening across the city. We're just saying that we want to make sure that you have a plot of land that is large enough to provide some buffer between you and your neighbors. Of course, we have considered any number of amendments here that are going to be different than the international code. This is going to be one of them. And the idea here is that Baltimore is the densest city in Maryland, one of the densest cities in the country, one of the densest cities, in the grand scheme of the world. So we're going to need different things than other less dense localities. And so in thinking about what makes sense, I think 200 feet is very reasonable.
Can I make my comment now, Mr.
Sure.
Chair? Well, firstly, Councilman Conway, I want to express the administration's support for your intent in introducing this amendment. But of course, after what you heard from the law department, the administration does not believe that this is the best vehicle for the desired outcome. We support ensuring that the residents of Baltimore City are protected from public health related pollutants, but believe that we need to work to ensure that the evidence exists and it is clear. Additionally, the administration has concerns about the likelihood that the city will be sued as a result of this amendment passing. And in order for the amendment to be defensible, we would have to be able to prove that we are not singling out one specific type of business, and that there's clear empirical data speaking to the existence of the public health concerns. I want to be clear that Mayor Scott agrees that air quality is extremely important in an urban environment, and we need to further study the actual emissions of not only crematoriums, but all businesses that may emit substances that could be harmful to the health of our residents. So for those reasons, again, the administration is not believing that, again, this is the best way to achieve the desired outcome in this scenario.
I would push back and say I've had any number of conversations with folks in the administration about how to tackle this. There is no best way to tackle this. We've looked at what other cities have done, and others have looked at 500 or 1,000 feet. So this is not the first time we've considered something like that. 200 is pretty modest in the grand scheme of things. I would also say this is not just a matter of air quality. This is also a matter of property value. And for the homes, for the businesses, and the folks that will be impacted by another smokestack put in a community that is not a McDonald's, it's really going to have a huge impact on people's property values. And if I own my home and someone wants to put something like a crematorium, I want to make sure I have enough distance to justify that it won't adversely affect my home values going forward. So I would say this is not just about air quality, and it involves property value as well.
Yeah, and I think that this is one of those things where, again, I didn't get this amendment until right before the hearing, right? And so
we sent it out 2 days ago.
I didn't get it. I didn't have this amendment.
Yeah.
We didn't get it until today. Mm-hmm. So that's something that would require further conversation with the administration, so that we could work with you on, what could be a potential setback situation here. But again, 200 feet from 30 feet, which is currently in the code, that's a drastic change, right? And that's something that the administration is interested in working with the council on prior to making drastic changes to, different areas in the code, so that, we can partner with you on it, and that we can ensure that we bring all the pertinent folks to the table to also inform those decisions that we make. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, thank you. And so the other amendments that we have here are from Council Vice President Middleton, which she expressed them during the hearing. Does anybody have any questions on Councilwoman Middleton's amendments? And then the last set of amendments we have are the DHCD ones, which were presented by DHCD. And so I will entertain a motion to move this full packet of amendments.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
My apologies. There's one, I don't know that DHCD went over their actual amendments, because there's one of mine that is in their packet. And so if you wouldn't mind us going over those,
Sure.
that would be super.
Sure.
Thank you.
Gladly. Would you like to review the one that's your amendment first, and then I'll turn the rest over to DHCD?
Sure, I believe it's the last one on the DHCD amendments, because I don't have them in front of me, although I know what mine is. As you know, I had two major fires in my district that the fire spread along the porch line. One damaged 10 houses, another a different fire damaged 4. So the amendment would state that in the cases where there is a new construction of a roof, porch roof, and it is directly abutting another porch roof, that the sheathing, which is the wood and everything else that makes up the porch roof, would have to be treated with a fire retardant material to reduce the amount of spreading of the fire along the porch lines. So that would be the one that's included in mine. Again, I don't have them in front of me, so I don't know what number they put mine.
Mr. Chair, just for reference, in DHCD's amendments, that is both amendment number 5 and amendment number 8. It is updating provisions in amendment number 5 in the International Building Code, and then in amendment number 8, it's updating provisions to the same effect in the International Residential Code.
Okay.
Oh, yes, I have them here. Sorry. Yep, that's right.
All right, DHCD, would you like to review the other amendments? Just high level,
Yes,
expeditiously?
I will. Amendment number 1, which is page 16, line 3. This adds retail big box establishments, which is a definition that got added into the zoning code. So it really is just lining up the issuance of use permits under the building code with language that's in the zoning code. Amendment number 2 comes out of when we met with law and addressed their concerns. So that's on page 19 in line 18. Instead of a must, making it a shall, and then correcting the language as to who needs to sign the document. And this is in reference to the temporary event permits. Amendment number 3, which is on page 12. Amendment number 3 corrects a bunch of typos. I think that there was, when the document was transitioned over, in a couple places, there were some letters dropped off. So on page 12, line 20, striking I and completing it so that it is the word is. On page 89, line 13, correcting the pluralization of splash pads to take the S off of splashes and add it to pads. On page 96, line 27, completing the word when. Or on page 97, line 12, completing the word to receipt. Or on page, same page on line 23, completing the word tax. On page 259, line 16, removing the or That should end at chapter. On page 73, line 14, striking 2018 and substituting in 2015. This was actually the last time we updated the code. This didn't get corrected, so it's reversing it to what it should be so that it's 2021. And then on page 318 in line 10, correcting the numbering so that it is 701.4.3.9. On page 319, line 18, inserting 701.5.30 Energy Performance Index as in the IGCC. And on that same page, in line 9, striking 701.5.3 and substitute in 701.5.4. So it's just a correction of the numbering. Amendment number 4, page 75, line 27. This was raised by the Law Department. It's adding in a definition in the definition section for unsafe structure. And then it renumbers the following sections below that to align with adding that definition in. Amendment number 5 on page 83 in line 7, striking 705 and substituting in 704. And then it adds in the language for 705 in relation to exterior walls. This is what the councilwoman just spoke of in reference to the porch roofs. Amendment number 6, page 104, after line 30, it's correcting the language there to bring the code in line with previous council action regarding gender-inclusive signage with bathrooms. We had missed that initially in our update and had just adopted what the ICC had done. So this was caught by the Law Department, and it's correcting it to align with other parts of the city code. Amendment number 7 on page 242, striking lines 4 through 7, and then adding in the care facilities. This is the amendment that the fire department spoke about. Their change, it just clarifies the change they were making and makes it 20-minute rated doors and not 30-minute rated doors. Amendment number 8, we already spoke to in reference to Councilwoman Ramos's porch roof bill, and I think that's the end.
Thank you very much. Any questions on what Mr. Hessler just said?
Mr. Chair, since there's been a lot of back and forth on these amendments and then changes to amendments made in the committee, can they be voted on one by one versus just voting on all the amendments at one time? I just think that for transparency, I think that would probably be the best way to go about it, because there's been a lot of changes made to these amendments just sitting here today.
Right, so as I stated in the beginning of the hearing and put it on the floor to the members of the committee, that we would vote, when you have a lot of amendments like this, what's standard, instead of being here until 7 o'clock tonight, going one by one, voting on each thing, is that we would do it as a packet. All of this will be updated within second reader. And so if there's a wish to withdraw one, you know, we could do a one-off if somebody had a request. I mean, I withdrew amendment number 3, but for right now, we'll continue as we discussed in the beginning, and see if there's a motion to move.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
can we pull out amendment number 7 and amendment number 4 in your packet? But to vote on separately?
You said 4 and
7.
7?
7.
Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
would it be possible to add one more comment to my comments in regards to amendment number 4?
On my number 4?
On your number 4,
Sure.
when I was talking about the difference between notices, I forgot 2 types of notices, which would be stop work orders and condemnation notices, which are both immediate actions.
Right, and that wouldn't be.
Yep, I didn't include that with the emergency.
This is,
so I
yeah, this is
wanted to
just,
clarify
yeah,
that.
this is separate from that. This is for repair orders that it gives a minimum defined time, which you're saying exceeds what I'm asking for anyways, so, but per Councilwoman Ramos's request, we'll pull those out, and I will do those separately.
Chair Schleifer, can I just clarify one of your amendment 2? Just there was a correction in committee to your amendment number 2, and I just want to make sure I understand it correctly. So it currently reads on page 27 in line 22, strike 30 and substitute 60. And on that same page in line 24.
Well, we're striking it and substituting it for 90.
So 60 should now become 90 in
Correct.
that first? Okay, thank you. And then in the second part
Per
of that,
my compromise with Mr. Hessler.
and then the second part of that amendment where we are inserting 61 to 180, is that now 31 to 90? Or is that remaining 61 to 180?
Well, I mean, that, I think by nature, that would end up going to 31 to 90. Is that how you read that, Jason? Because the 180 is irrelevant at this point now that we shorten it down to 90.
Just a point of order. Could we table the amendments until we get the reprints? So we're very clear about what it is. I'm happy to come here before the next council meeting and have another just voting session.
I mean, we're on a pretty, we're on a time crunch. I mean, this legislation was handed to us a lot later than it should have been, and so we're on a tight time crunch. And so if we don't get through these items and we come back and do it again, then we're going to just risk the timeline that if we don't amend it, then it basically reverts completely back to the state, and everything that's in it is gone. And so that poses a big challenge for us. I'm certainly happy to. What I prefer to do here is let's vote on these amendments. I'm going to pull out the 2 that Councilwoman Ramos requested. At which point, anything that passes today, things that are still outstanding, I'm willing to entertain and do it on second reader. I'm just trying to oblige the request of the administration to keep this moving.
I'm uncomfortable with not seeing the reprinted versions, just being transparent.
Okay, I mean,
Mr. Chair, I'm wondering what the time constraint is. Do we, if we could be transparent about what that time constraint is, please?
This bill has to be passed by May 29th. It has to be passed and signed by the mayor. Otherwise, what happens is our code is null and void, and it reverts to what was adopted by the state. So everything that is specific to the city of Baltimore that is in the code will be gone and replaced with everything that the state adopted. So it'll be a very generic state code, and we will have to then go in and try to make all of those changes.
So we have a meeting.
And just as a point of reference, I mean, we hear lots of legislation. There's lots of amendments made at every hearing. We don't get reprints prior to voting on amendments. And so being that this one actually has a time constraint, I'm trying to be accommodating to the administration on that. So if there's any unreadiness, I certainly understand.
Well, I'm just being transparent with the council. As someone with a disability, I need to see reprints because numbers are something that's with my dyslexia. If not, I'm voting no on all amendments.
Okay.
Just to be transparent with colleagues.
That's fine. So, and you're going to vote no across the board on every piece of legislation that there's no reprints prior?
There's a difference between numbers and words for someone with a disability. I have to physically see it, and I'm just being transparent, and this is just me being me. And I've sat here, I've listened, I've heard the back and forth among members, but we've had council meetings and hearings, voting sessions prior to a council meeting and double read it. I'd rather have a reprint to read it for myself again and make sure my staff cross-referencing as well to be sure, because that is the duty of my vote for representing the 40,000 persons I represent in the 7th Council District. And I'm requesting as a member of this committee, as a person with disabilities, to have it reprinted so that I can read it.
Mr. Chair, just wanted to clarify if the councilman wanted the amendments redone or the reprinted within the context of the whole bill.
I don't know, because this is the first I'm hearing requests like this. We've been in countless hearings where there's been amendments and bills have gone through. So, look, this isn't my time constraint. I am following the request of the administration. If there's unreadiness in this committee, I'm simply, you know, I'm open to delaying a vote if that's the wishes of the committee. If the wishes of the committee are to put a motion forth and vote on it, like we do across the board, I'm happy to do that as well. But I certainly, I'm doing my best to try to accommodate the request of the administration and to proceed with this accordingly. And so if this bill gets stalled out and basically everything that's in it reverts to the state, you know, that's obviously a risk that we take by not taking action today. So I will open up the discussion for the committee to discuss that.
Might I make a suggestion here, Mr. Chair? Sure. Couldn't we just literally read out any of the amendments that have numbers in them?
No, I don't think you understand. We had a rule that when we have amendments, we read them, we've stated with that, and when we've never made, and being frank, even thinking about this, when Councilman Dorsey offered an amendment several months ago from the floor that was not written, we did not accept that amendment. We've made changes to amendments on the floor.
Yeah, that was on third reader and it wasn't written. I mean, this is the standard practice.
But as a person with disabilities, that is not only unfair to me, but as well as the people I represent. And I'm just being transparent. We're going to double read this anyway the same day. We can have a committee hearing and double read it.
So, Councilman, I think part of the reason why I'm suggesting this is we know where the time is. I don't need to say what started today. And so that doesn't leave us all that much time. Every time we meet here, that's less time for you. And so I think
not even related.
Let me finish what I'm saying.
Let me be clear. It is not related to that.
Talking,
I
Councilman.
have
Please,
another.
let me finish what I'm saying.
I have to pick up my child.
Let me finish what I'm saying,
we have to
Councilman.
get
If
this
you don't
done.
want to hear me, that's okay. Please, let me just finish what I'm saying. Just let me finish.
I'm out.
The suggestion is simply noting that we have to finish this.
And I hear you, but we're going to double read this anyway on the 16th. Why not have a committee hearing with the reprinted actual amendments on the 16th and double read it, vote on it, and then double read it the same night?
There may not be any time.
If I make an amendment, here's the thing, right? If I make an amendment on second reader, we then have to hold it over and can't double read it the same day, which means that we have to have another council meeting where we have to double read it. That is within our rules.
I fully appreciate
So,
you.
like, I'm being transparent.
Okay.
Okay.
Point of order. Just give me a second. Let's sort through this. You know, trying to work through given the constraints. Look, you could make amendments on second reader. And we can still double read it.
We can't. When we double read something the last time, our parliamentary held it over for an additional meeting.
You can as long as you have 12 votes. But here's the thing. In order for there to be a reprint in general, anyways, of this piece of legislation, we're not reprinting the bill in a bunch of different scenarios based on what may or may not pass. And so
I'm just asking that the amendments be reprinted.
So are you talking about all? Are you talking about all amendments? Are you
all the amendments that we had changes to be reprinted so we can have a voting session prior to the council meeting on the 16th? That is a minor request.
The only changes that I see here is 180 days was shortened to 90 days at the request of DHCD. So that's the request. I mean, that's the change. If you'd like,
there were multiple.
I don't mind going in recess and asking Ben to go back to his office and change that 180 to a 90. I have it written here also. If that's what you would like, I'm more than happy to ask him to go to his office and we'll take a 5-minute recess. He'll go there and in Amendment 1 and 2, he'll change the 180 to 90, and on Amendment 2, he'll change the 60 to a 90. We're simply just talking about.
If there was actual verbiage change on one of the amendments as well, not just numbers. So
the verbiage change on Amendment number 4 just says excluding emergencies. So we will be in a 5-minute recess. I will ask Ben if you can please go to your office and change those two numbers as well as add in excluding emergencies to Amendment number 4.
Mr. Chair, I just want to, one quick thing. I want to support my colleague on this because honestly, these amendments didn't get to us until right now. So there may be like on Amendment 4 and Amendment 7 that I asked to be pulled out, I have some questions that I want to ask DHCD about, and I would like to have that time to do that because I literally saw those amendments
Well, that's-
right this second. And
Councilwoman,
so-
that's what we're here for.
Right,
So
no,
ask
I
them whatever
understand.
questions you like.
I understand, I asked my questions, but then I want to see, where all the citations are that I had asked for and the timeframes, so that we can see whether the 14-day makes sense. If it doesn't, do we do 7, do we do 8, do we keep it broad instead of doing the 14? Like, we didn't get a real good answer there, and so, instead of voting it down, I'd like to try to at least work it out. And so that's the other reason to, we can come back, in the next couple of days after we see that data so that we can try to work it out. Again, I just didn't get a chance to.
I'm happy to come in tomorrow.
I didn't see these. Thank you.
So that's fine. So, okay, so,
Miss-
Mr. Hessler, can you please elaborate and respond to Councilwoman Ramos's questions and provide any information that she's requesting?
Sure. The issuance of violation notices, a stop work order and a condemnation notice are issued immediately. They're actually, a sign is posted on the door, and then it's followed up with the mailing of the physical notice, but those are immediate actions. What we consider emergency notices are issued with a correction time frame of under 72 hours, and that includes lack of hot water, lack of heat, sanitation, sewage rather, in the busted sewage pipe, or a missing smoke alarm or a carbon monoxide alarm. Any sanitation violations, which is under the Property Maintenance Code, Section 304, 305, in that area, those are high grass and weeds, trash on the exterior of the property, lack of cans, improper disposal. Those are issued, if issued as a violation notice, at 10 days. And then all other violation notices are 30-day notices. So that includes vacant buildings, that includes other interior violations, defective porch, anything on the exterior that's not a sanitation issue. And these are all violation notices, so they would then trigger re-inspections. They stay open until the work is completed. Separate from the violation notices and not covered in this section would be that we do issue citations. And citations are issued, and we don't come back to that citation for at least 10 days in order to give time for that to arrive in the mail and get there. But that's not, covered in the code. In the code, we could cite somebody for the same violation every single day. We only do that in very extreme situations, and when we do that, we go out the same day that we are generating that notice, and we post it or hand deliver it to the recipient. Those are extreme situations that rarely happen, but can occur.
Councilwoman, does that clarify?
So those are the only categories. So you have the emergency ones, the stop work orders, sanitation violations, and then all others. There's no other categories that we have different days for.
Condemnation was the other one, but yes, correct.
Condemnation is when?
Condemnation is just like the stop work order. It's an immediate.
Okay, so the language of this was going to be changed to emergency and not immediate, right? And so we may need to say emergency and immediate. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, we need to clarify what is an emergency and an immediate because you're using two different words. I'm happy to discuss it separately, but do you know what I'm saying? If we were going to exclude immediate and emergency, from the 14-day, you know, that's what I'm trying to get at and why we need a little bit more work on these two amendments.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Councilwoman.
while we're discussing these present amendments, I just want to keep in mind that the amendment that I had put in did have public testimony, and that person has requested to try to get a vote on that today, and I just hope that that doesn't fall through the cracks.
I hope not either. All right, so anyways, we're going to take a 5-minute recess, and we will come back. Thank you. All right, good evening, everybody. We are back, Rules and Legislative Oversight Committee. We have the amendments in front of council members, and so at this point, there was a request from Councilwoman Ramos to pull out Amendments 4 and 7 of my amendments, which we have done so. And so I would like to first move those two amendments, and then we will move a packet of amendments with all the rest of the amendments after that. So I would like to make a motion to move Amendments 4 and 7 favorably, which now have become Amendments 1 and 2. It's on a separate page with the new printout. So I would like to entertain a second for those two amendments. Motion made by Schleifer, seconded by Conway. We'll do a roll call vote. It's not going to work.
Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Chair Schleifer?
Yes.
Chair Schleifer votes aye. Mr. Burnett is absent. Mr. Costello is absent. Vice President Middleton?
Aye.
Vice President Middleton votes aye. Member Ramos? Nay. Member Ramos votes nay. Mr. Torrance?
On amendment, I'm going to separate this one. On amendment number 1, I am going to go nay. Amendment number 2, yay.
Well, they haven't been divided.
Oh, they haven't been divided?
They haven't
I
been.
thought we was moving as one packet.
Yeah, she has to do these as, I mean, I could separate them if you like.
Okay.
Would you like to do that?
I was just going to make it specific. So
Okay, so we'll do that. So I'd like to table that motion and do them individually. Amendment number 1, moved by Schleifer. Second. Seconded by Conway.
Chair Schleifer?
Yes.
Chair Schleifer votes aye. Mr. Burnett, Mr. Costello absent. Vice President Middleton?
Aye.
Vice President Middleton votes aye. Member Ramos?
Nay.
Member Ramos votes nay. Mr. Torrance?
nay.
Mr. Torrance votes nay. Mr. Conway? Aye. Mr. Chair, there are 3 votes in the affirmative, 2 negatives, it passes.
All right, that amendment passes, a majority. Next up, Amendment number 2.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Councilwoman Ramos.
there need to be 4, correct?
No.
Only a majority of those present voting.
Amendment number 2. I'd like to make a motion to move Amendment number 2 favorably. Do I have a second? Seconded by Conway. Go ahead.
Chair Schleifer?
Yes.
Chair Schleifer votes aye. Burnett and Costello absent. Vice President Middleton? Vice
Aye.
President Middleton?
Aye.
Aye. Vice President Middleton votes aye. Member Ramos? Nay. Member Ramos is nay. Mr. Torrance?
Aye.
Mr. Torrance votes aye. Mr. Conway?
Aye.
4 votes in the affirmative, 1 negative. Both amendments are approved.
Thank you. We are now moving the rest of the amendments as a packet. So that is the new page 1 of 1, Schleifer amendments, Amendments 1, 2, 3, and 4. That includes the amendments from DHCD, that includes the amendment from Councilman Conway, and that includes the very important amendment from Council Vice President Middleton. So I'd like to move... That's everything remaining. I'd like to move all of the amendments as a packet. Second. Moved by Schleifer, seconded by Conway. Do a roll call.
Chair Schleifer.
Yes.
Burnett, Costello absent. Vice President Middleton.
Aye.
Member Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Torrance.
Yes.
Mr. Conway.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, there are 5 votes in the affirmative, no negatives. The package of voting amendments have been approved.
Okay, I'd like to move the bill favorably as amended.
Mr. Chair, before we do that, my understanding was that for the first amendment that we voted on, there were only 3 yays, and my understanding is that for committee, we need 4 yays. Or does that mean, or does it, is it just because we needed a more?
We need a majority of the committee for final action. For procedural motion amendments, that we only need a
Majority of the members present.
Oh, the one, majority of those present.
Correct.
That's
Voting.
why this is different than what had happened in another committee.
Yes.
on the motion to finally move the bill. You're going to need
Right, so we'd have to have the votes on the bill. So I have a motion to move this bill favorably as amended.
Second.
To be heard at second reader at the special council meeting on May 16th, 2024 at noon. And we will discuss double reading this with the president's office.
Second.
Seconded by Conway.
So it's your motion and Mr. Conway is second. Okay. Ready for roll call? Chair Schleifer.
Yes.
Chair Schleifer votes aye. Mr. Burnett is absent. Mr. Costello is absent. Vice President Middleton.
Aye.
Vice President Middleton votes aye. Member Ramos.
Okay, just go, skip. She wants to skip. We'll come back to her.
Member Torrance.
Aye.
Member Torrance votes aye. Mr. Conway.
Aye.
Mr. Conway. Mr. Conway votes aye. Member Ramos votes aye. Mr. Chair, there are 5 votes in the affirmative, no negatives. The bill can move to second read at the special meeting at the 16th, and the 16th at noon.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. We are now adjourned.